Hello and welcome to Learning with Joy. Today we are learning comparison of adjectives. Comparison of adjectives is a way to express how a noun is different from another noun. We use them to talk about two or more nouns and say which one has more or less of a certain quality. When we want to compare two or more nouns using adjectives, we use degrees of comparison. There are 3 degrees of comparison. We have the positive, the comparative, and the superlative. Positive degree of comparison is the basic form of an adjective. It is used to describe a noun without making any comparison. Examples: Mrs. Smith is a hard-working teacher. The Pacific Ocean is large. Comparative degree of adjective compares two nouns. We add er to the end of the adjective, or we use more or less with the adjective. Examples: Mrs. Smith is more hardworking than her assistant teacher. In this sentence, we are comparing Mrs. Smith to her assistant teacher, thereby comparing two teachers. And it is compulsory that after the comparative adjective, you add than in the sentence. The Pacific Ocean is larger than the Atlantic Ocean. In this sentence, we are comparing two oceans, the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. And remember to add than after the comparative adjective. The Pacific Ocean is larger than the Atlantic Ocean. The superlative degree of adjective compares 3 or more nouns and indicates which one is the most or least of something. We add est to the end of the adjective, or we use most or least before the adjective. Examples: Mrs. Smith is the most hardworking teacher in the school. It is compulsory that you put the definite article the before the superlative degree of adjective in the sentence. The Pacific Ocean is the largest ocean in the world. We have rules to follow when making comparison of adjectives. Rule 1. For one-syllable adjectives, we add er to the comparative and est to the superlative. Example: in the positive we have tall, hard, fast, rich, and great. In the comparative we have taller, harder, faster, richer, and greater. And in the superlative we have the tallest, the hardest, the fastest, the richest, and the greatest. Rule 2. For one-syllable adjectives ending in e, we add r to the comparative and st to the superlative. Example: in the positive we have nice, close, safe, large, and late. All words in the positive ends in e, so we just add r in the comparative and st in the superlative. In the comparative we have nicer, closer, safer, larger, and later. And in the superlative we have the nicest, the closest, the safest, the largest, and the latest. Rule 3. One-syllable adjectives that follow the consonant, short vowel, and consonant pattern, the CVC pattern. We double the final consonant when forming comparative and superlative adjectives. Examples: in the positive we have fat, big, hot, sad, and thin. We double the last letter in the words in the positive, in the comparative, and in the superlative. In the comparative we have fatter, bigger, hotter, sadder, and thinner. And in the superlative, we have the fattest, the biggest, the hottest, the saddest, and the thinnest. Most two-syllable adjectives, we add more or less for the comparative and most or least for the superlative. Examples: in the positive, we have careful, handsome, active, decent, and loyal. In the comparative, we have more careful, more handsome, more active, more decent, and more loyal. In the superlative, we have the most careful, the most handsome, the most active, the most decent, and the most loyal. Rule 5. For most two-syllable adjectives ending in Y, we change the Y to I before adding ER to form the comparative and EST to form the superlative. Examples: in the positive, we have heavy, pretty, dirty, lazy, busy, merry, and easy. In the comparative, we have heavier, prettier, dirtier, lazier, busier, merrier, and easier. And in the superlative, we have the heaviest, the prettiest, the dirtiest, the laziest, the busiest, the merriest, and the easiest. Rule 6. However, there are some adjectives that can be correct in either forms, the ER or EST form or the more or most form. Examples: in the positive, we have clever and simple. In the comparative, we have cleverer, or we can use more clever. We also have simpler, or we can use more simple. In the superlative, we have the cleverest or the most clever, the simplest or the most simple. Sentence examples: he is cleverer than his brother. He is more clever than his brother. Rule 7. Adjectives with 3 or more syllables form their comparative by putting more in front of the adjective and the superlative by putting most in front of the adjective. Examples: in the positive, we have beautiful, powerful, difficult, generous, and obedient. In the comparative, we have more beautiful, more powerful, more difficult, more generous, and more obedient. In the superlative, we have the most beautiful, the most powerful, the most difficult, the most generous, and the most obedient. We have irregular adjectives that do not follow these rules. Examples: in the positive, we have good, in the comparative, we have better, and in the superlative, we have the best. In the positive, we have bad, in the comparative, we have worse, in the superlative, we have the worst. Little, less, the least. Many or much in the positive, in the comparative, we have more, and in the superlative, we have the most. In the positive, we have in the comparative, we have inner, and in the superlative, we have the innermost. In the positive, we have out, in the comparative, we have outer, and in the superlative, we have the outermost.